I'm going to go ahead. So today we would like to welcome Fred Stopsky, who is going to speak with us on German youth who resisted. Fred is international. This is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is observed annually on January 27th, the day on which Auschwitz concentration camp was liberated by the Red Army in 1945. We welcome our speaker, Fred Stopsky, a former high school teacher, college professor in education who taught in Southern Missouri, was involved with the St. Louis Holocaust Museum at the time of its inception, and over many years has made numerous presentations to teachers, students, and church groups in Southern Missouri about the Holocaust. Today, his presentation is on German youth who resisted in World War II. German resistance to Nazism is not widely known, and this presentation is based in part on his personal interaction with German educators in the 1960s and the 1970s. Welcome, Fred. I'm so happy you are here today, and I'm going to turn it over to you to start your presentation.
Thank you very much. I'm born in 1930 in the Bronx, New York. That's why my accent is not St. Louis. In 1951, I joined the Army and was stationed at Stuttgart, Germany for 18 months. I joined a group with German youth to discuss what happened. I quit after 4 months because they would not tell the truth about what was going on. Now, in 1991, I was at Yad Vashem, courtesy of the St. Louis Holocaust Center. I'd done some work for them while teaching at Webster University. And I went to the head of education and said, could you tell me in your words the significance of the forest of righteous Gentiles? His response, when you enter Yad Vashem, you see the most incredible stories of hate, violence, destruction. If you leave Yad Vashem with hate in your heart, Hitler won. For the next hour, we're just going to listen to some stories about German youth. When I say youth, I mean 25 and under. I don't think any of them is over 25. I got out of the Army. I taught at high school in 3 places, Harlem, Long Island, California. In 1968, I came to Webster College, and a year later, I became Dean of Education. Well, in 1972, I kind of wrangled my way to a conference in London on child-centered education. Once sat down with a gentleman, introduced myself. He said, my name is Professor Manfred Bayer, B-A-Y-E-R. I'm from Hamburg. And we were talking for a few minutes, and then he said, Fred, ask me the question. So what are you talking about? He says, Americans always ask me one question. I said, okay, what did you do in Nazi Germany? He's about my age. And he said, oh, I was in Hitler Youth. We both broke out in laughter. He says, let me tell you my story. So this is the first story I ever heard from a German about what it was like to be in Nazi Germany and how did you resist. By the way, Hitler came to power in January 1933. Most people don't know his vote total was 32%. He was called Chancellor originally, Prime Minister. Then when President Hindenburg died, he then became full ruler. So this is a story Manfred told me. His father was a socialist union leader in Hamburg. Hamburg was probably the most anti-Nazi city. His father was arrested, taken to police headquarters, beaten up, and spent 2 months in jail and told, you better behave from now on. They had a family meeting. I suspect millions of Germans had a similar meeting. What do you do now? They decided he would not have any contact with any kids who he thought were really Nazis. So he said, he basically hung around with about 3 boys. And one day, one of the boys, Willie, said, I got an idea. Why don't we join Hitler Youth? Then our fathers can say their children are good Nazis. So he says, I got my Hitler Youth uniform. My father went down to the police station and they said, you're now a good man, Mr. Bayer. So the first thing I raise is joining the Hitler Youth resistance. What I'm trying to introduce you to is complexity. What do you do when you are living in a society that is totalitarian? There's the police, the Gestapo, the Hitler Youth, the brown shirts, the SS. So this is a very complicated story about what happens when you're in this world. Shortly after, I came across a book written by a woman called Melita Marshman. It's a memoir of her life in Nazi Germany. And her best friend was Jewish. And one day, her friend is out of high school. Holocaust scholars describe 1932, to January 1942 as stage 1. There was no plan to kill Jews at this point. The plan was to get them out of Germany. Anyway, Melita Marshman says, one day her friend is gone. So what she decided to do was go over to her friend's house, apartment, 3 times a week, and they do homework together, discuss what was going on in school. She said she did not realize at this moment that this was permanent. It was very confusing. And then she says, one day she came to her friend's apartment. It was deserted. And I read you what she writes. As I was walking home, I did not see Jews being beaten or forced to scrub the sidewalk. She never again heard from her friend. So my question to you, I raise this as a question. How do you deal when you walk through the streets and seeing innocent people being beaten up because of the Jews? I come back, remember, only 32% initially of German people voted for Hitler. So the stories I'm telling you, they're sort of complex in many ways. Manfred had mentioned to me that his older brother was in a resistance group called the Swing Kids. About 4 years later, the film, The Swing Kids, came out. By the way, I'm pretty certain the film is in the St. Louis County Library. I watched it and I finally got to understand what he was talking about. Now I have to take a moment to explain what is America to German people in the 1930s. It is very different from the way we talk about America today. America is the new world. No nobility, no kings, no emperors. A Pole might hate a Russian in Europe, in America, their neighbors. Remember, between 1850 and the 1930s, over 50 million Europeans came to America to live in peace. By the way, America is the first nation in human history to have freedom of religion. So let me read a police description of the swing kids. These are young kids who would play American jazz, jitterbug. They wanted to be free, and they were playing music that was the complete opposite of traditional European music. So here's a police description of it. The dance music was all American. Swing and jitterbugging take place. None of the dancers danced normally. They made an appalling sight. When the band played a rumba, the dancers went into wild ecstasy. Sometimes two boys dancing with one girl. They just jitterbug and jitterbug like wild animals. What is the music significant? It allows you to be free, open, the total opposite of anything your parents would do. Remember, this is the Depression. In America, 24% of people were unemployed. It was a time of poverty. Germany had lost World War I. 14 years, in 1918, the Germans surrendered. Your nation was now not what you were taught in school. It was now under a dictatorship. So these young people, it was freedom. It was also defiance of their adults. The best analogy I can give you, in all honesty, is some of you remember the 1960s and the way kids were rebelling against the Vietnam War. I'm not making any equation. I'm simply trying to draw an analogy. What happened, the film The Swing Kids explains what happened. It didn't take too much for the police to know when they were holding these dances, raid them. The boys were forced to join the Hitler Youth. The girls were forced into what's called the DMB, means the German Female Association. And the film kind of ends with the last kids being caught by the police, and it's over. It probably, my hunch is, it did not last more than 3 or 4 or 5 years at the best. And by the way, the kids got their records, these dance records. They go down to the seaport in Hamburg and wait for an American ship to come. And when the sailors got off, they were able to get them. I want to mention one last thing about what the police felt this music was. Among the famous musicians in America on swing and jazz, by the way, people like Benny Goodman, Artie Shaw, Jews were heavily involved in music, and obviously Black Americans. They use the N-word. I'm not going to use that expression. They often refer to America as the mongrel nation. Now, let me take you to another example. In a few years later, after I met Montford, we ran a summer school in England on child-centered education. 25 teachers came from St. Louis. And so I got a chance to meet his colleagues and so on. One of them was a woman called Professor Helga Dortmund. And she told me this story. Her father was a doctor who had Jewish colleagues. And of course, Jews couldn't, treat Christians, and they had great difficulty getting supplies like medicine and so on. So she said her parents would give her a shopping bag. She was about 12 or 13. And they put the medicine at the bottom of the shopping bag. Then they covered it with fruit and stuff like that. She said, my mother always put a big cake on top. And then during the week, she went to a matinee. And she walked in, meet the doctor, put the shopping bag next to his leg, said, I waited about 5 or 10 minutes, and, like you stand up to go to get a drink of water or the restroom. And when I got out I waited until the cashier was busy, and then I just slipped out and went home. I said, what happened? How long does it go on? He says, one day, all his colleagues were gone, and this ended. Now, you notice the stories I'm really telling you, just ordinary events. Somebody trying to continue being a decent human being, trying their best to help people who are suffering. If you want stories about trying to overthrow Hitler, there are books written about the generals who try to get rid of him, and that's not what we're talking about today. I want to come now to another youth group. Very, very unusual, very different. The swing kids, for the most part, were middle or upper middle class kids. My hunch is their parents had influence to protect them. These are called the Edelweiss, Edelweiss Piraten, the Edelweiss Pirates, working class kids. Himmler. These youth should be given a thrashing and put through severe physical labor and put in the Hitler Youth. Police chief of Dusseldorf on the Edelweiss kids. These are tough and defiant youth. They don't like being told what to do. They sing forbidden songs and hand out leaflets. They write anti-Nazi comments on subway walls. These kids at points would walk down the street in a group of 30, 40, 50 of them. If they found the Hitler Youth group, they'd beat the hell out of them. In fact, the Dusseldorf police say they sometimes used brass knuckles in attacking Hitler Youth groups. They robbed the homes of local Nazi leaders. Say, these are nuts, like the swing kids. They loved jazz again. They did the same kind of thing of dancing. They did things like the following, which made me laugh. If they saw a Nazi official car on the street, they put sugar in the gas tank. They were defiant. These were not polite kids. In our term, you might call them a gangster. In their turn, they weren't trying to overthrow anybody. They didn't like Nazis because we're telling them what to do. They also helped army deserters. Now, here I have to take a few moments and stop and make certain you understand what's going on in the war. Okay, on my 9th birthday, August 31st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. This began World War II. I'm just going to take a few minutes because I can't teach the war, obviously. They defeated Poland in 35 days. England and France declared war, basically sat in the military installations, did not attack Germany. Then in the beginning of 1940, the Germans conquered Norway, then Denmark, Holland, Belgium, and Hitler insisted on an attack through the Ardennes forest. And by June 1940, he controlled all of Western Europe except for Sweden, and by Finland joined him. Then Hungary joined him, Romania joined him. So basically, he was the dominant force in Europe. At this point, I'm absolutely certain that Hitler was at the height of his power. Okay. I now want to take you, before we get into the next stage, the great mistake of Adolf Hitler, obviously, is the invasion of Russia in June of 1941. I'll come to that in a few moments. But I came across a story of a very interesting young boy. His name was Helmut Hubener, Hubener, again from Hamburg. I didn't realize until I got into the story that there were Mormons in Germany. My guess is 100,000 at tops. And again, let me take a moment to clarify about religion here. If you're Catholic, obviously, it's the Pope Pius XII, who runs the church. He appoints the priests, the cardinals, the bishops. There were obviously German, Lutheran, other Protestant denominations, and the German government could impact them. So Hubener initially was forced into the Hitler Youth. He's a very devout Christian. Everything in his Christianity told him he could not be a Nazi. So he just quit the Hitler Youth. And then what he started to do was write leaflets and pamphlets and put them in different places. Pardon me. He listened to the BBC. The BBC is the word for anybody who had a radio, get a whole contact the BBC programs. That was their source of information. This is what Helmut wrote. The Fuhrer has promised you that 1942 will be decisive, and he will stop at nothing to keep his promise. He will send you by the thousands to keep his promise. By the thousands, your wives and children will become widows and orphans, and for nothing. In February 1942, somebody spotted him passing out his pamphlets, and he probably was leaving them in different places. By the way, he was excommunicated by the Mormon Church. On October 27, 1942, believe it or not, Hitler personally had him executed. He was beheaded. At 16, he's believed to be the youngest resistant person who was killed. By the way, I just discovered last week, I was trying to check more about him, that the Mormon Church has now ended the excommunication. Okay, I'm trying to keep track of my time. It's about 20. Okay. I want to come back now because the next stage of what we're talking about deals with a different group of youth. On June 22nd, 1941, 3 million German soldiers invaded the Soviet Union. I'm sure most of you know its head was Joseph Stalin. This is obviously the greatest mistake of Adolf Hitler. A lot of the stories I now will tell you lead back to the army. And then I come back to the Edelweiss pirates. Who were the deserters? My guess would be many of them would have been guys from their gang who went to Russia. I just take a couple minutes to fill you in. The German invasion would be the length, it took the Mississippi River about that length. Initial great success. I once asked my father, who's from Russia, what's it like to be in Russia, Pop? He says, you don't want to be in Russia in the winter. And unfortunately, for the Germans, the Russians delayed them, and by December, they had just reached the outskirts of Moscow without winter clothing. Anyway, the Russians stopped them. So now a lot of the stories will deal with men, young kids who had been forced to be in the army or had joined the army. I came across this one by a lieutenant. It was a book of kind of letters written by German soldiers to loved ones. And it's written by Lieutenant Monstein. In the letter, he says he just turned 21. And he's writing his father. It took dumb Fred Stopsky a few days to figure out Monstein, that's General Monstein on the general staff. And this is what he writes. Father, I cannot tell you what I have seen or done. Remember, here is where the mass shootings, you've all seen pictures of Jews being forced into wooden synagogues, burned to death. You've all seen the graves of Jews like a Baba Yar, places like that. I know you all know that. What do you tell your loved ones when you see somebody bashing a baby's head in? And I think this is what's getting to this kid. Father, I cannot tell you what I have seen or done. Listen to this line. My life is in the stars. You and the generals must do something to stop this. Kiss mother for me. Father, I salute you. Goodbye. He obviously went out and got himself shot. Another 18-year-old soldier. Is there no one who restrained this madman? You generals are a bunch of shitbags. Which leads me to the most famous resistors. I don't know if some of you have heard of Hans and Sophie Scholl. There's Hans and Sophie Scholl elementary school, middle school, high school. They're all over Germany. I have to say a word about their father. I came across something written by one of the daughters, they were 6 kids, Elizabeth Scholl, said, this is what dinner at our home was like. Her father was a pacifist. Actually, he had served in World War I in the medical corps, become a successful businessman and a mayor. He said, our father would introduce a topic and we start arguing. The whole night we'd be yelling and screaming at one another. She says her father wanted us to have principles, values. He wanted them to come to the conclusion of being a pacifist. He wasn't going to impose it on. Well, Hans Scholl, I'll start with Hans. He joins the Hitler Youth. Outstanding record in Hitler Youth. Sophie Scholl, if you go online and see a picture of her, she's gorgeous, like a movie star. She joins the DMB, the German female group. Again, outstanding record. In 1942, Hans is in the army. He goes off to Russia. I can only assume, and I think it's a correct assumption, that a boy like this, witnessing the horrible things, the mass murders, must have upset him, and it just overwhelmed him. Finally, he's wounded. He goes back, sent back and discharged from the army and returns home. He lived in Munich. Goes back to college, and he tells his family what he had seen and endured. Then he and Sophie create, it's called the White Rose Gang. It wasn't a gang in our sense of the word. It was a group of kids, college kids. And what do? They write pamphlets, leaflets. Here's what Hans writes. I can't give you everything. Somebody has to make a start. It's high time that Christians made up their minds to take the way of resistance. We will have no answer when asked the question, what did you do about it? We grew up in a state which all free expression of opinion was ruthlessly surrendered. The SS, the Hitler Youth, have tried to drug us, regiment our minds in the most promising years of our lives. Sophie, a call to arms. I can't read all the things to you, but I just wanted you to get a sense. The war is approaching its inevitable end with our nation headed to a disaster. Now is the time for Germans to act. These Germans must do something to avoid being lumped with the Nazi barbarians by the outside world. She also wrote pamphlets and leaflets. I want you to listen to the deportation of Jews. This is a very controversial point. I asked this of Manfred once. What did you know about Auschwitz, places like Treblinka? He said he had no idea about that. They knew about Dachau, because that was in Germany. By the way, today in the liberation, among the first people into the liberation was Ilya Ehrenberg, a very, very famous Russian reporter. But back to Sophie and the White Rose Gang. In February 1943, they were handing out their leaflets and pamphlets. What they didn't give it to people. They put it in places where people could pick them up. And a janitor spotted them. And both were arrested along with their friends. I have read The Interrogation of Hans and Sophie Scholl. I've read a dozen interrogations. By the way, I've read over 600 books on World War II. So I've read this stuff. It is the most confusing interrogation I've ever read. Let me start with Hans. The interrogator, by the way, neither one was ever had tortured or endured physical violence. Interrogator, Hans, there must be a mistake. Your outstanding record, Hitler Youth, you served your country in Russia, you're wounded. Tell me where the mistake is. There's no mistake. It's got to be. You're a dedicated Nazi, young boy. Tell me what's wrong. It goes on and on. And finally, the interrogator says to him, could you please write an apology? He actually used the word please. Could you please write an apology? At worst, you'll go to jail for a few years, but you won't be executed. Hans had nothing to apologize for. Sophie, same thing from her interrogator. Not once did they use any violence toward these kids. Same thing. Could you please write an apology? She says, no. I believe everything I've written. We've got to get rid of Adolf Hitler. So in February 1943, they are told there'll be a trial. Trial. 2-hour trial. Here's where the thing gets even crazier to me. Their father gets into the courtroom. It just baffles me. How do they let his father in? He listens to the quote trial. I do not make this up. I do not make this up. He rushes at the judge and shouts, quote, my children will go down in history, you won't. And they drag him out. On February 23rd, they're executed. The German, actually German soldiers then said they were shocked at the behavior. It must have been some German soldiers who weren't that Nazi. They said Hans walked with his head up high. He was the first to go. And they beheaded him. Then, but by the way, again, I'm so confused. Their father was standing outside. He saw them go in. And then Sophie goes and she's beheaded. Today, these two kids are among the most respected from World War II of all the children who died. And their father, by the way, was then arrested and sent to prison for 2 years. Her father, I wish somebody would write a book about him. He is such an incredible man who stood by his kids in all ways. My time is getting shorter, so let me. I want to come to I think of all the people I studied, her name is Hiltgun, Hilgunt, Zassenhaus, Zassenhaus. I think I fall in love with her. She's an incredible young girl. Her father was a liberal historian and a principal of a high school and was fired. And this is Hilton. She went to a very liberal high school. In my generation, by the 1930s, we pledged allegiance every day in school. Obviously, in Germany, every class pledged allegiance to the Sieg Heil. So the teachers say, stand up, got to pledge allegiance. She sits. They say, Hilton, you got to stand up. I don't want to stand up. So you got to stand up and raise your hands. You want me to raise my hand? I'll put it through the window. That's an exact quote from her. I'll put it through the window. And the principal comes up, Hilton, you got to stand up. And finally, they persuaded her to stand up. But she won't say anything. Anyway, the story gets more bizarre. She applies to college, is accepted. She majors in Scandinavian languages. That would mean she worked, she got a degree, and you will never guess who hired her, the Gestapo. And she was assigned to censor mail from Norwegian prisoners. She worked at a group called the Norwegian Seamen's Church. And she then developed a file system for every Scandinavian, obviously the other Scandinavian would be the Danes, in prison. She censored their mail, she came to visit these Norwegian prisoners. She brought them food, medicine, vitamin. The one that actually totally cracked me up. A guard said she couldn't give food to the prisoner. She said, "Do you know who I know?" "No, I know Himmler personally. You want me to make a phone call to Himmler?" She got away with that. I read you something. Even in the most desperate circumstances, we as individuals can make a choice. This is what humanity is all about. We must never cease to listen to our conscience. It guides us towards serving life. We are on, if we serve life, we are on the right course. It is certain she saved the lives of a few dozen Scandinavian prisoners. After war, by the way, she migrated to the United States of America, to Baltimore, Maryland, became a doctor, and she died 2004. I'm getting close to my 45 minutes, so
You want to see if anyone has any questions at this time? And if
go ahead, ask the
if we don't
question.
have any questions, you can continue on. So does anyone at this time have questions about something that Fred has shared? Yes, Harvey, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Yes, Fred, thank you for your presentation. Many years ago, I saw a movie regarding the Shoals and what they did. I don't know if you're familiar with that movie, but if you are, I was wondering whether it was accurate in its portrayal.
Could you give me the question?
So yeah, Fred, so can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so Harvey was wondering, there was a movie several years ago about the Shoals. If you have seen it, and if you thought that it was accurate.
Well, could you tell me the name of the film?
It might have been, was it Sophie Scholl, The Final Days? Maybe someone has
Yeah,
put that.
yeah, I'm sorry, I was gonna mention this. There is a film on Sophie and Han Scholl. I know that the Swing Kids is in St. Louis County Library. I'm sure that the Holocaust Center has the family, that motion picture. Yeah, it's very accurate. I saw it.
Harvey, is that the one you think you were referring to? Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So Peggy Cohen.
Hmm.
I'm
You
gonna
go on?
Peggy's gonna ask a question and I'll repeat it.
Okay.
Okay, so first, to say that many years ago, my path crossed with Fred's. When you were at Webster, my professional life was at UMSL. I look a little bit different.
Could you do that again, please, Peggy?
Peggy said that you and Peggy have crossed paths. She was at UMSL when you were at Webster. It's good to see you again.
Could you ask it again, please?
So Peggy said, can you hear me, Fred?
Hmm?
So maybe the sound isn't working. Can you hear me, Fred?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Peggy Cohen was at UMSL when you were at Webster. And it's good to see you again.
Okay.
So here's my question, and Judith, thank you for that. It's not I guess it is a question. What advice, Fred, would you give to youth today who find themselves eager to stand up for their convictions?
You know what I've learned in my life? I can only do, I'll just give you an example from my life when I had to stand up. I wrote the first high school textbook in American history that had a chapter devoted to the life of the American Negro. And the first to discuss what Black Reconstruction and honesty was for Addison Wesley. And Texas liked the book, except for that chapter. And it said, they said to the publisher, change the chapter to the mind of the South. You can put a little bit in about the Negroes. So I talked to the publisher and I said, what do you want to do? Because he says, you know how much you're getting, Fred? They're offering to buy 50,000 a year. You get $2. I said, that's a lot of money. I said, you get more than me. You want my opinion? I'm gonna go to hell. I'm not changing anything. He says, you know, you're giving up $250,000. That's in 1970 terms. I said, I just, what am I going to tell my children? I swear that's what I said. I might tell my children, I gave this up for money. I can't, I got kids, I can't do it. So what do you want to do? He says, I want to tell them also to go to hell. So that's what I did. I think you can only do in your own life. I can't change America. By the way, I worked on the integration plan for the United States 7th Army. Today I'm being told we did nothing. Like hell, we did nothing. We integrated the first United States Army in history. The 7th Army was the first to be integrated. I think sometimes people want you to do things you can't do. All you can do is who you are. I am who I am. And I'd love to have money, but not at that price.
Yeah.
That's all I can say about it. And I keep on hearing people, each person, it's like the mask, isn't it? You wear a mask because you want to help people. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else have some questions they'd like to ask? We're getting fairly close to time.
Could I just say one thing to the group?
Absolutely.
The swing kids you can borrow from the library. Why don't you borrow the film? You invite some of your friends. You lead the discussion. You don't need me. You can do it. This is one way you can do something to get people thinking and really deal with some of the issues. I've tried to raise some issues to you. How do you survive when you're living in a totalitarian society? And I try to indicate it's each person comes down to their own choice, what they can do as a person. That's what Hilton Sassenhaus was talking about. That's what Hans and Sophie Scholl were talking about. What you can do. You can't change the government. That's crazy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fred. I think, does anyone else have another question at this time? Yeah, Marilyn, go ahead. And
Would you mind if I said one more thing to them?
Sure. And then Marilyn has a question for you. Okay. Go ahead.
In 1936, a fascist general in Spain started a civil war, to overthrow the democratic government. 1,000 Germans came from Germany to fight for the democratic government of Spain. They're called the Thalmann, Thalmann battalion. 30% of them were Jews. Believe it or not, German Jews were among the first to fight against Hitler. Germans were among the first. I'll recite something to you from a song. Die Heimat ist weit, our homeland is far away. Doch wir sind bereit. That's where it's beautiful. We're kämpfen and fliegen für dich. We're standing here and fighting for Freiheit. That was their song. And they fought. And they're totally ignored, by the way, that very few people know among the first to fight were Germans. They had the opportunity, they fought. By the way, two of my uncles fought in the German army in World War I. One of them won the Iron Cross. Very few people know the following. Hitler was recommended for his Iron Cross by his Jewish lieutenant. Life is strange, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. So, Marilyn, did you still have one question that we will go ahead and take, and then we'll
I'll take any question.
Okay, Marilyn, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay.
There we go.
How does one keep their resolve against overwhelming odds against them?
Sure.
How does one keep yourself,
their ideas, their goal,
how do you keep your ideas and your goals at a resolve? I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
How does one maintain their values against overwhelming odds of people who want to destroy other people?
Okay, so Marilyn would like to know, how does people maintain their values when there's overwhelming odds for each other to destroy each other?
Yeah.
I come back to all I can do. I'll be 92 this year. Is try to maintain my dignity. I try to do everything possible. I've got 3 grandchildren. I don't ever want to do anything that would endanger I can just take care of my family. and the people I know. I will vote, definitely. But I think that's all you can do. And the stories I was trying to give you, these kids, that's all they could do. They couldn't overthrow Adolf Hitler. That's crazy talk. One of the problems I was mentioning this earlier is that we sometimes, let me put it this way. I was raised, I took part in integration of the US 7th Army. We did not change America. We did one thing. And today I'm told we did nothing because we're not perfect. I'll be honest with you. I'm probably among the most patriotic people you ever met in your life. My friends died in Korea on a hilltop, defending the people of South Korea. This is, I don't know if you got a minute, it's a crazy story. My orders were lost, and last day I was in the Army in August 14th, 1953. I ran into one of the guys from my unit, name is Jack Morris. He used to beat up Jews when we had our fights during basic training. One day he beat up a kid called Art Goldberg. And he looks at me and comes over to me and kisses me on the cheek. He says, "Thank God I met a Jew." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Would you forgive me, Fred?" I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." He says, "I was in Hilltop, Pork Chop Hill. And I got wounded and couldn't move. And a hand grenade came in. And Art Goldberg threw his body over. And we talked. Look, I'm 22 years old. I don't know what the heck's going on. And all I could say to him was, "Jack, you're going back to San Angelo, Texas. It's a new world. You're going to have to learn to live with Negroes on an equal basis. I hope the hell you do it." And when I was walking away, I do not make this up, I said to myself, I got to do something in my life. I got to do something. That's why I decided to become a teacher.
Well, thank you so much, Fred. And I think that this is going to, I think we're going to have to wrap this program up, but I want to thank, this program has been sponsored. Thank you so much, Fred. This was absolutely wonderful. We really appreciate all of your story and your life sharing that you have provided to us today. This program was co-sponsored by the St. Louis Kaplan Feldman Holocaust Museum, and Amy Lutz is joining us this afternoon, and I believe that she would like to say a couple of things for us this afternoon. Amy?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
I promise I will be brief. I just want to say a couple of things about the Holocaust Museum. It's something that I'm sure many of you are quite familiar with. The actual building does share a kind of space with Mirowitz, in a sense. We're next door neighbors. So as I mentioned, my name is Amy Lutz. I'm from the St. Louis Kaplan Feldman Holocaust Museum. The museum was founded over 25 years ago, but if you drive by on Lindbergh, you'll see we're going under a very exciting renovation. We actually closed right around the beginning of COVID, and we will be opening late summer this year. We will be reopening our museum. The museum space will be triple the size of our former museum. And one of the beautiful things about it is that it pays special attention to the stories of St. Louis Holocaust survivors and their families. And I can tell you just from seeing pieces of it that there's some beautiful stories, some beautiful artifacts that are part of it. Now, before then, we have a very exciting opening of several months from now, but the museum is still providing some virtual programs. So on today, which is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, we don't have our own program. We're here, I'm glad to see you guys have one over at Mirowitz. Our Holocaust Remembrance Day program will actually be on this coming Sunday at 1:00 p.m. We are going to be doing a virtual film screening and discussion of the film The Last Stage, which came out in 1948 and was actually filmed in part on location in Auschwitz-Birkenau. So it should actually be quite an interesting discussion. If you want to find out about that, if you want to find out any more about International Holocaust Remembrance Day, Holocaust history, or any of the programs we have coming up, you're welcome to reach out to me directly or just go to our website at stlholocaustmuseum.org. That's all I got.
Thank you. Thank you,
Well,
everyone.
God bless you. Okay. God bless.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. And we have, just so everyone knows, in the chat box, there was a lot, and Fred, there was a lot of suggestions about ideas that they took off from your suggestion about watching the movie and maybe getting a discussion group together. We'll have to see how that may play out. But your suggestion was well received and ideas are coming from that. So thank you so much, Fred, for all of your information and your
Thank you. for coming.
heartfelt stories, and everyone else for being here today. And for right now, we'll say goodbye, and then we'll see what we can do with more information. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.